Dr. Palitha Kohana, the senior diplomat who served in Sri Lanka as permanent representative to the UN in New York until recently, says that warmer relations with the West should not come at the expense of relations with the East. He expressed these views in an exclusive interview with Newsfirst Shamir Rasoodin.
Dr. Kohana, you were attached with the United Nations system for nearly 10 years and then you served as a diplomat in the United Nations for nearly 5.5 years. However, the thinking of the United Nations changed after the 8th of January 2015. Agreed or disagreed?
I don't think it changed. I think there was a certain warmth in the attitude. When the government changed and the foreign minister visited the United Nations, there was a noticeable warmth in the attitude. And I'm saying this without denigrating in any way the attitude towards the representatives of the previous regime.
Did the United Nations dislike the former administration?
I wouldn't say so, no. I could categorically say that there was no such dislike in the United Nations.
However, after the 8th of January, the United Nations changed its policy towards Sri Lanka. You saw the report of the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights in Geneva postponing the report as well, the publication of this particular report in question. Can the United Nations change its policies based on a different government coming into play?
I think we are mixing up two things here. You know, there are different angles to this. One is that by delaying the release, now the report could be further strengthened because there's more time to obtain other information which they may have missed earlier. On the other hand, Sri Lanka also has the opportunity now to deliver on some of the commitments that we have made on human rights violations, on accountability.
Is it an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think it is both.
Is Sri Lanka on the right track in terms of human rights? Because now the country is engulfed in this 100-day program, the 19th Amendment, so on and so forth. This is a core question of the international community. Human rights, accountability issues. Do you think Sri Lanka is on the right track?
One is that the international community as a whole has never really put Sri Lanka on the dock. The international community consists of 193 members of the United Nations. It's only a small percentage of countries, especially Western countries, who were posing these questions to Sri Lanka. International community's relationship with Sri Lanka should not be limited to a perception that we have to deal with only those few countries in the West.
Dr. Kohana, one of the allegations leveled at the previous regime is the fact that the previous regime did not have a foreign policy. You were part of the previous regime. You were appointed by the previous regime as ambassador to New York. You were also the foreign secretary for some time. How do you view this? Did Sri Lanka have a foreign policy?
I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration because we did have a foreign policy. It was based on the concept of non-alignment. We tried to develop relations with both the East and the West.
Do you think we are moving away from the East and getting close to the West?
My hope is that this is not true. It's very important to consolidate our relationships with the countries in the West, and I think that's a very important thing for us, having good relations with the East and the West. We should develop those relationships, but not at the expense of the solid relationships we've already had.
The UN resolution clearly states that intervention of the international community is needed when formulating the domestic mechanism, the domestic process in which the Sri Lankan government has promised special mandate holders should arrive in Sri Lanka and assist if the need be. How do you view this? Will this in any way affect the sovereignty of the country in the long run?
I think Sri Lanka has come under a lot of pressure over the recent years. There are many other countries in the world who are probably in a worse situation than us, but they don't come under the same pressure. So, but as a country, we need to deal with it. We can't avoid it, we can't escape it. So you can't blame the international community. We ourselves need to respond to it. We need to deal with it.
If you are invited to take up a post in the foreign service by the present regime, what would be your response?
In 2006, I left this job and came back to Sri Lanka because I had the opportunity to serve the country. And if I'm given that opportunity to serve the country, I will do it again.